All right, back on another episode of specialty tools that I've got here. And some of these are just reference to specialty tools, but let's start with this one on the end. I think this screwdriver started out as a Harbor Freight screwdriver. And basically what it was used for is for these type of springs on the Ford F-250, F-350, some Super Duties, but it was before the 99-2000 year. And I believe the way that I had set this up was to put in there and then just to bend that over, and I could get these unlatched from the hook that came in through the backing plate. They did actually have a regular tool for this. However, I always found it on my own to actually build my own tools. Next, this one right here, just a regular old screwdriver. It's got a drywall screw welded to the end. This screwdriver is probably 30 years old. And basically it was used to just pound into the end of a wheel seal or a timing cover seal or anything like that. Just tap it with a hammer and then screw it in. And then either pull it out, or I could stick a set of wire cutters on there and just pry it real carefully. And that's what that was used for. Now I've got another one that was used for that purpose as well, only this is a smaller, shorter screwdriver when I had some limitations on length. And you can see it's kind of bent up and used pretty well. And this one, another, it was a T15, but now what it is, see if you can see the end of that. This is it's basically let me see if I can get, my hands are probably fairly dirty. But you can see what it is a triangle. And what this screwdriver is for is, this is an odd thing to have, but on little kids' video games, sometimes the screws holding the video games together were this weird little triangle-shaped screw, and I never could get the things apart to either change the battery inside or something like that. A lot of them had Phillips, but there was a few when they first started coming out that had this oddball little triangle. That's what I built that for. Now this, it's actually pretty well worn and actually broken. You can see the tip of it. All it is it's just a mini pry bar is all I used it for taking little bits and pieces out or something like that. Just a regular screwdriver. I know they always say don't use it as a pry bar, but sometimes you can't get a big old pry bar into some place. It just doesn't fit. So that's why these little cheapy tools work. This one, just a regular old long Phillips. Nothing big or great about it. What it has, though, this sheeting on it. This is basically heat shrink tubing that I got and I put around this. And the reason why I thought that I needed this was I was working on certain bits of equipment that they would have battery voltage running across an alternator or something where I wasn't able to directly disconnect the battery, and I didn't want to short out anything, so I used this sheet over it just to keep it from shorting out. And it's fairly thick. You can see it's well worn. It's got lots of wear on it. If I put this up against here, it'll focus better, but you can see that that's basically what I used it for. Next up, just a plain Jane Little old screwdriver, and it's just got a vacuum line on the tip of it. And the reason I use this is actually used to pull glow plugs out of a 7.3 or even a 6-liter, but mostly used for a 7.3. After you do injectors and you want to pull the glow plug out in order to crank the engine over and spit all the oil out of the cylinder, this is what I used. and I used it also for just changing bad glow plugs, but just a simple screwdriver with a little tip on it made out of vacuum hose. Next one, this is really just a little old Pakistani made, they're like a little tiny plier is what they are. They work real good for retrieving little tiny parts. But what I mainly bought this for is back in the 1980s when I started working for Chevrolet. We'd have people coming in with cassette player. Their cassettes had actually stuck in the player, and it was a nightmare getting the cassettes out without tearing them. And this worked real good. I had to be pretty careful with it, but you can see how it pivots right there. And then the end of it just acts like a little tiny alligator head. I would imagine you could use this for other things, but this is basically what I bought it for. I think I bought it at a flea market. This one, this is something that Ford technicians that have been around for a while might recognize. It doesn't look like much. It's pretty unassuming. However, the magic is in this Torx bit right here. And the reason that this is the way it is that there was a recall back in late 80s, early 90s, up through about the mid 1990s on Ford vehicles that had ignition switch failures. And it took this oddball tamper-proof Torx to get the little bolts out. And instead of taking the whole steering column down, of course, all technicians need to beat flat rate at some point. I built this little tool, and basically I pushed the bit through there and just tack welded it right quick. And I was able to pull those bolts out of there, and I was beating times by over half doing those ignition switch recalls. So that's what that was for. This one, obviously it's just an air chuck. And the reason I have it is because at some point there was a difference between these air chuck ends. These are basically, you could see it's a valve tool, but not for tires. This is basically for air conditioning. And before this tool was actually available, it was only available from the dealership through the wholesale tool parts, which was either Rotunda or Kent Moore. And one day I got the bright idea that I could probably build one myself, and that's what I did. Before that tool was actually available, this is what I used, and it worked pretty good. Next one. This is just a plain little old screwdriver. And you can, if you know what you're doing, you can kind of see what it is. But it's just a Harbor Freight screwdriver that I've used, and I'll buy sets of these and I'll make little tools out of them. But this one was for, I believe it was a Honda. It was really hard to get to the back spark plug boot to do a tune-up. And there was also one on the Ford, I believe it was either the Aerostar or the Windstar, one of them. They were kind of tough to get the boots out. And you could reach this back behind the cylinder head and get it around the bottom of the boot and pull that boot loose, and that would kind of save you some time going up and down off a lift trying to do a tune-up, like on the back of a V6 or something. That's what that's for. These two tools, this is Ford 7.3 Power Stroke. This is for the oil, high pressure oil lines going to the cylinder head. And I believe this one's the one that goes to the 6-liter. I believe. I might be mistaken. However, what I did was before this tool actually came out. This is just a regular old trim clip tool, and I took that and I got in there and ground that down a little bit so it would fit, and I was able to use that on the 7.3 high pressure oil lines at the cylinder head, because we always took out high pressure oil pumps back in the 90s and early mid 90s and early 2000s. They were going out all the time, so That's what I use this tool for and why I made it. So anyway, there's you another quick update on specialty tools that I've put together over the years. Been in this business about 38 years now. And anyway, like, share, and subscribe. There's your thumbs up. Thank you for watching.